evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Got to be honest, not many of us in the press are looking forward to the 2020 Democratic primary. Just hours ago, it felt like it was going to be an exhausting, miserable affair. The current field is a mixture of fossils, extremists, and power-hungry cynics willing to say anything and hurt anybody to get a hold on the White House. But things have changed. A new candidate has entered the race, a man untethered from the old ways, possibly even from the conventional restrictions of physics, time and space. More a spiritual force than a temporal leader, more a poet than a politician. Ladies and gentlemen, the author of our redemption, Beto O'Rourke.
Beto O'Rourke, the social media phenom.
Despite his loss to Ted Cruz, the rock and roll loving 46-year-old caught the nation's attention. His offbeat social media posts appealing to a younger generation, even taking us skateboarding at Whataburger. His Senate candidacy winning the endorsement of celebrities like Beyonce.
Beto loves rock and roll, says GMA. He's not like everyone else. He doesn't do stuffy speeches or policy programs. He's not going to bore you with entitlement projections or some scary stuff about the Korean Peninsula. Beto's got a skateboard and wears Nirvana t-shirts. His vision for this country is 1995. That was the year he was living way uptown in this walk-up and working as a manny and knew this dude on West 112th Street with some of the stickiest bud in Manhattan. Indica. A little heavy, but sweet. It was a good time. Beto wants to bring us back to that time, and the press is totally on board.
I saw him for the first time just a month ago when he sat down with Oprah, and me and the rest of the people in the audience thought, wow, this guy has this dynamic, positive energy.
Yeah, he has that raw talent. He is very kind of Obama-esque indeed. The women voted for him in the suburbs of Houston who hadn't voted Democrat before because they had a kind of Beto crush going on. You know, he's wholesome and he's earnest.
He's got that magic dust. Of course his son is named Ulysses. I love that that's his son's name.
He has that gleam in his eye. Somebody, Evan Smith at the Texas Tribune said seeing him is like, it's like a Jesus Christ superstar seeing this guy in front of people. He's got that celebrity aura about him. And in that moment, he was owning that.
You heard it. Beto's got that magic dust. Oh, yeah, he does. At least an 8-ball. Though the guy on 112th Street has more if you need it. Beto's got great hair, too. Beat that combo. Actual voting doesn't begin for months, but Beto is already America's spiritual president. And by the way, that's a much cleaner way to run for office. Real elections, the ones with voters, sometimes end like this.
So we have quite a bit of big news to report. We can call now that the Texas race will go to Ted Cruz, the incumbent Republican.
That Ted Cruz win over Beto O'Rourke, significant.
Well, that election was a bummer. So Beto split soon after on a solo road trip. It was a whole me and you and a dog named Boo kind of thing. The sort of trip that Kerouac or Steinbeck would have taken. Just the hum of the engine and the black ribbon of the open road. A time to feed the soul. Also a time to stage a series of publicity shots for Snapchat and Instagram while simultaneously blogging the whole thing. Timeless stuff. An all-American redemption story. Beto came back a better man. He understood the running for president thing was not for him.
Is there a scenario where you run for president in 2020 or beyond?
No.
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 Unequivocally, you will never run president.
No punto. No period.
No punto, baby. Down on the border where the people are authentic and speak various languages at once. That means, yes, I am running for president just as soon as I can hire a staff of consultants and line up some billionaires to fund it. But for now, I will lie about my plans. And that's exactly what Beto did. And so here we are in the age of Beto. What's the plan, man? What are we doing? What's next? Well, what's next, Beto says, is understanding that the things that we think of as terrifying threats to the country are actually perfectly cool. Like more than 20 million people using fake identities to live illegally inside the United States. That's not a problem. That's the best, man.
All of us, wherever you live, can acknowledge that if immigration is a problem, it's the best possible problem for this country to have.
Yeah. It's the best problem. Hard to think of a better problem. Illegal immigration is such a cool problem to have. We ought to have more. Let's knock down the border walls, dude.
If you could, would you take the wall down now? Here.
Yes.
Like you have a wall.
Absolutely.
Knock it down.
I'd take the wall down.
And do you think the city, if there's a referendum here in this city, that would pass?
I do.
Yeah, it's fine. But that's not to say Beto doesn't see problems on the horizon. He does. And when he does, his dough-brown eyes cloud a little, and he stares off into the distance to consider a holistic solution, just like James Dean would have done if he had lived to be Beto's age and could skateboard. Beto says global warming is a major bummer. Global warming could make us go extinct, like the dinosaurs in the museums, man, dead forever.
Some will criticize the Green New Deal for being too bold or being unmanageable. But I tell you what, I haven't seen anything better that addresses this singular crisis that we face, a crisis that could, at its worst, lead to extinction.
Extinction. That's what Beto's fighting against. What else is he for? Well, it's a fair question, but honestly, it's not really clear. We checked his campaign website. There's a picture there that says Beto for America in English. The one in Spanish says Beto for all. We couldn't find any actual policies, even about fighting extinction. We did find a sweet Beto tote bag, just $30, and you don't even have to pledge to NPR to get it, though you probably already have. You already get one. It's awesome. Chris Plant hosts the Chris Plant Show. He joins us tonight. So, Chris, rather than ask you the conventional political questions about who's up, who's down in this race, I want to do a very quick quiz, because it's Thursday, and it's called Stoned 10th Grader or Beto. Now, I'm going to read you a couple quotes, and you tell me where this one came from. Stoned 10th Grader or Beto. Here's the first one, and I'm quoting now. I'm going to take my sweater off, and it's not because he asked about marijuana. Who said that?
I'm going to go with Beto on that.
Ah! There's a reason you won Jeopardy. Yes, Beto. Okay, here's the second. When I was 6 and 7 years old, I didn't know I wasn't a Mexican.
I'm going to go with Beto on that one, too.
Man, okay, you're right again. Okay, here's the last one, and I'm quoting. I don't know if it's a speech or not, but it felt amazing because every word was pulled out of me like by some greater force, which was just the people there. Everything that I said, I was like watching myself, being like, how am I saying this stuff? Where's this coming from? Is that a stoned 10th grader or Beto?
Can I combine the two and make it a stoned 46-year-old?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Si se puede, you might say. Exactly. That's so good. So obviously this is a campaign micro-targeted at morning shows on the other channels. I mean, I get that, to the media class. But who else might be taken by this candidacy?
Well, he has all the qualities, as you described there, to be a DJ on an MTV show or to win The Bachelor and get a rose and win the date or whatever it is they win on those shows. But now the process we have is instead of winning a rose and getting a date at the end, you get the White House. And that's basically what this is. It's a game show. And Beto is the hero, as you said, of the morning shows. He was called a rock star at least twice. I was only watching for a little while on CNN this morning. Rock star, rock star. And they couldn't be more excited. They were giddy, and they didn't bring up anything. There is nothing discouraging or critical that you can say of Beto. He is nearly perfect. He's going to prevent the secular apocalypse, which looms large in everyone's mind. I know we have 12 years. Have you noticed that we have a 12-year countdown clock, but the countdown clock never starts counting down? That they keep using the 12-year, and they're going to keep using it for years and years. 6 years from now, we're still going to have 12 years, and that's their timeline for saving us from ourselves, from the dreaded secular apocalypse. He was today. Some of the audio I played of him today is talking about countries where people now live, which will soon be underwater and will be uninhabitable, and hundreds of millions of refugees are going to flood to us, and we better take them in and learn their languages and do whatever. Barack Obama claimed he would slow the rise of the oceans. I think that Beto's claims are much more grandiose than Obama's.
Can I ask you a non-Beto? I just cannot resist, since you've been in the media for so long, you know it so well. Linguists have shown that the use of cliches is a marker for low IQ. Dumb people speak entirely in cliches. What does it tell you that almost every political reporter uses the same cliches every 4 years? He's a rock star. Is there no original language allowed in political coverage ever?
The reporters and more the candidates are using the same bumper sticker language and brief, keep it to the point, keep it simple, stupid, hope and change. Today there was no hope and change. It was all horror and apocalypse and we're all going to die. It was the most uninspiring and uninspired message I'd ever heard from a presidential candidate in the United States in their first day running. It was grim and glum. And, the woman you had on a couple of nights ago who doesn't want to have children, That's because she was listening to people like Beto O'Rourke, and we're all going to die. It's utterly apocalyptic. And if that's an inspiring message for the Democrat Party in 2020, then hello, President Trump's second term.
So I got to make a correction. Apparently, we just got a call in the control room, and we made a mistake. The quote, "When I was 6 or 7, I didn't know that I wasn't a Mexican," is not from Beto. It's from Beto's dad.
Oh.
And it's not from a stoned 10th grader either.
Well,
True
his
facts,
father...
apparently. I just heard that in my ear, so I'd like to apologize and correct.
Well, Beto's father was a big He's changed parties, Beto's father. He's changed parties. He's now a Republican, apparently, but he did campaign for Jesse Jackson for president repeatedly. And his father used to be, maybe he put down the bong, too. I don't know. But now I read, at least, that you can't believe everything you read, that he's come over to the bright side.
Interesting. We're going to have to drug test at some point for candidates. Chris, thanks very much. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.
David Teferi is a lawyer, a former advisor to Barack Obama's presidential campaign, and he joins us tonight to assess this new addition to the Democratic primary field. Great to see you, David. So if you could summarize the skateboard candidacy of Beto O'Rourke, how would you?
Well, I'd say on the behalf of the Republicans, it's fear, because you just spent 10 minutes being sarcastic about Beto O'Rourke, as did Chris. You guys are pretty funny. You came up with some good attacks on him, and I think those are some of the attacks the Republicans will use.
Easy.
But you know, there's a super PAC in Iowa, Fund for Growth, that's already put up ads against Beto. They started last week before he even declared for president. That's because Republicans are scared of him as a candidate. Now, why are they scared? Number one reason is because he ran for Senate in Texas, which is a red state, and he almost
can I just pause really quick and say, if Republicans are afraid of him, that means that he's harmless. I mean, Republicans also thought Jeb Bush was going to be the nominee. So Republican consensus is almost never right in politics. That's not a good marker. But tell me why you think he's a great candidate. He just lost the Senate race.
As I was saying, you know, he almost won in a super red state, Texas. That means he can bring over independent voters to vote for him. No other candidate on the Democratic side has been able to show that they can do that in a red state, statewide. He also is a prodigious fundraiser. He raised $70 million for his Senate campaign. That's a record. No other candidate for Senate on either side of the aisle has ever raised that much money. That makes him a formidable candidate. Now, he doesn't have a full
so he's got the billionaire
class
behind him. Okay.
He doesn't have a full platform of issues yet?
Well, he doesn't have, he has got a tote bag and some talk about extinction, but he doesn't have really a platform at all. And so why would you announce for president before coming up with answers to the most basic questions about where the country should go?
Well, it's a good question, and I think it's a strength and a weakness for him. I mean, obviously, the weakness is he doesn't have a full platform of things he can run on, though he was a congressman for 6 years, and he did vote on lots of different legislation. But he has to now build his platform, but it can be purpose-built for 2020, aimed at the center. He's a moderate Democrat, so he can distinguish himself from the left-wing part of the party. He's going to distinguish himself from Bernie Sanders and from Elizabeth Warren, and he's going to go on that track.
No, you're supposed to be defending him, and now you're attacking him. You just said he would build his platform purpose-built for this election. In other words, he would be whatever he thinks he needs to be. He's totally as hollow as he seems. That's what you're saying.
That's not what I said.
If he believes something, why doesn't he just tell us what it is?
One of the reasons he's appealing is because voters view him as genuine. That's borne out in the election results in the Senate campaign in Texas. That's borne out in the polling as well. So he's going to build an agenda. It's going to be consistent with his own values. What I'm saying is he's not on the record on lots of different issues. So he can build it in a way that's consistent with his own values, but tracks towards the middle of America and shows a serious contrast with President Trump, whose poll numbers are still very low, historically low.
So let me ask you really quick. Oh, I think a Democrat has a shot for sure. But Beto specifically, very quick. He on camera said that we should tear down the border barriers that separate the United States from Mexico. Are you for that?
That's not what he said. He said we should tear down the wall in El Paso, where he is from, because actually the crime rate went up in El Paso after they built the wall. That's a fact.
The city on the other side, that's not, hold on, the city on the other side is one of the most dangerous places in the world.
But not El Paso.
So why would you...
But not El Paso.
Because there's a wall between them. Okay, so do you think we should tear down the border wall between El Paso and Juarez? Do you think
I don't. I do not think we should tear down the wall.
But it's insane, actually.
But immigration is going to be an important issue for Beto. And what he's going to have to be able to show is that because he's from a border town and he's from a border state and he's been in local government and in Congress, that he knows how to deal with the issue of immigration. He certainly cannot be for open borders. He can't be for open borders because America is not for open borders.
Well,
but he can come up with some reasonable solutions and compromises that all of America would support, that would protect our country, but have a path for legalization for some folks who are here, like the TPS and Dreamers.
I think your average person would say tearing down the wall between El Paso and Juarez is not a mainstream position. I mean, you don't support it. I don't support it. I agree with you. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about this as the Beto movement continues, dude. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, newly released transcripts from Peter Strzok reveal the scope of the FBI's insurance policy, the famous insurance policy, which was, of course, the Russia investigation. We'll get details on that after the break. Republican Congressman Doug Collins today released a transcript of disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok's testimony before the Congress. The transcript sheds some light on his handling of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server, as well as his now famous text message to his girlfriend Lisa Page, assuring her that the FBI had a, quote, insurance policy against candidate Donald Trump. Fox Washington correspondent Kristen Fisher has been on this story and has more for us tonight. Hey, Kristen.
Yeah, hey, Tucker. Well, there are several revelations in the transcript released today from Peter Strzok's closed-door testimony, and perhaps the biggest is that despite all of those anti-Trump text messages, Strzok told the committee that special counsel Robert Mueller never once pressed him on political bias. The transcript also reveals that the Justice Department essentially cut a deal with Hillary Clinton's attorneys that laid the ground rules for FBI access to her personal email servers. And Strzok said part of that deal was that the FBI was not given access to any emails about the Clinton Foundation. Republican Congressman Doug Collins, who released the transcript, explains why he did it.
I believe the American people deserve transparency and deserve to know what transpired at the highest echelons of the FBI during this tumultuous time for the Bureau.
Strzok's attorney put out a statement saying Pete welcomes the release of the transcript and that it is further evidence that Pete at all times discharged his duties honorably, patriotically, and without regard to his personal political opinions. But remember, the Justice Department's own Inspector General concluded that he did not have confidence that Strzok's decision to prioritize the Trump investigation over the Clinton investigation was free from bias. Tucker.
Kristen Fisher, Forrest from Washington. Thank you very much. Francie Hakes is a former DOJ official and a trusted voice, we think, on this matter, and she joins us tonight. Francie, thanks very much for coming on. What's your reaction to this transcript?
Well, Tucker, unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me at all. I think that anyone who thought that the FBI was making decisions alone without prosecutors from the Department of Justice doesn't understand how the Department of Justice works. FBI agents cannot file an arrest warrant. They can't get a complaint. They can't get a FISA warrant for sure. They can't get a search warrant or a grand jury subpoena without a federal prosecutor. And they certainly can't go to grand jury and get an indictment. So they needed federal prosecutors to agree to prosecute.
Huh. So tell me what we know about the insurance policy. I mean, that seems like the most ominous phrase to come out of all of the declassified and unearthed documents in the last 2 years, and no one's ever really explained sufficiently what they were talking about.
No, they really haven't, Tucker. It's actually sad when you see a career man like Peter Strzok coming out and saying through his attorney that he was a patriot and free from bias, when it appears very clear that he had a preference in the presidential election, and his text messages with Lisa Page show that he was acting on that bias. I just don't know how you can argue otherwise. Partisans certainly do, but people with a brain certainly can't. And it looks clear to me that they were putting their thumb on the election, and the insurance policy was this bogus counterintelligence operation that started with nothing and was lies to the FISA court. And we're here 2 years later still talking about collusion.
So a functioning government would see this as a threat to people's faith in government itself and to the power that the DOJ wields over our lives, and would go in there and make absolutely certain that none of this crap remained and that people were fired over it, and would show the public, look, this is a clean agency. That hasn't happened. Why?
I don't know, Tucker. It really, really baffles me that the president has not fully declassified absolutely everything and made everyone give statements about exactly what their motivations are. There are lots of people we've never heard from. I have no idea who the prosecutors were in the Clinton email matter, or for that matter, that worked early on the Trump investigation and counterintelligence and who sought the FISA warrant. We don't know their names. We don't know their motivations. We don't know why they did it. We don't know why they lied to the FISA court. I don't understand why this hasn't been declassified. I hope that soon we have all the answers so everyone can evaluate it.
Of course, because, I mean, Trump is at the center of the story, but the story isn't really about Trump. It's about whether you can trust that your government isn't lying to you and trying to hurt you for politics. Have a right to believe that, and we don't. Francie Hicks, I hope you'll stick with us as this story continues, because it's always great to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Outrage is spreading tonight after dozens of people were indicted. They were accused of engaging in a massive scheme to cheat college admissions, to game the system. Now, several colleges are themselves being sued in this, and we'll have the very latest on it. Stay tuned. The last 30 years, the Southern Poverty Law Center has become a powerful force in American politics. It has a lot of power, and it gets it by systematically slandering the political enemies of the left. Oppose their agenda on immigration, practice conventional Christianity, believe in the biological difference between the sexes, host a show like this one. And you can expect the SPLC to brand you as an extremist, a hate group, an enemy of humanity. They've gotten rich doing it, by the way. They've got an endowment of more than $500 million. But even as it called all of its political enemies evil, the SPLC was, and you will not be surprised to hear this, apparently operating on a very different standard within their own offices. Today, the group abruptly announced the firing of its founder, Morris Dees. The group has not revealed what exactly Dees did. Its statement implies behavior was severe and widespread. The SPL says that not only has it fired Dees, it will be bringing an outside organization in to review the work environment of the entire group. Josh Moon, who's a reporter in Alabama, who's reported on this, cites an internal SPLC email and says that Dees was fired for a mix of sexual harassment and, again, buckle your seatbelt for this one, racial bias. Despite calling the group the Southern Poverty Law Center, there was nothing impoverished at all about Morris Dees' own lifestyle. He lived very well, probably better than anyone else in the state of Alabama. He was 82. He was the SPLC's highest paid employee, and he lived in a luxurious place on a couple of hundred acres. He got rich by frightening grandmothers, sending him direct mail, and hurting his political opponents. That pays well. This evening, Dees spoke with a local reporter and denied all wrongdoing. That's not surprising. Dees has set himself up over 30 years as the arbiter of good and bad. He believes the right thing, so he is by definition a good person. You disagree with him, and you are by definition evil. We'll continue to follow the story because we think it tells you a lot. Meanwhile, the backlash continues tonight after dozens of people were caught taking part in an elaborate effort to rig the admissions process at elite colleges across the country. Yesterday, a class action lawsuit was brought against 8 colleges by individuals who claim the schools share the blame for the rigged admissions, which, of course, they most likely do. Last night, we told you this was simply an example of a wider trend. The ruling class looking down on people and gaming a broken system in order to get ahead of them while keeping them out. But no need to take our word for it. We have the numbers. 33 parents so far have been indicted in this scandal. We took a closer look at all of them. They're overwhelmingly from the coasts, primarily from the state of California. Then we took a look at their political donation history, and it was interesting. Of the 33, just over half had made political donations that we were able to find. 11 were Democratic donors to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Kirsten Gillibrand, and others. 8 were Republican donors. But here's the interesting thing. The politicians they backed, Mitt Romney, Bob Corker, and John Ensign. Not a single one of these people we could find donated to Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Now, of course, nobody's obligated to donate to Donald Trump now or then, or to vote for him, it goes without saying. But there's a huge split within the Republican Party right now, and the side that they found themselves on tells you a lot. This is a class of people that is absolutely and thoroughly satisfied with the status quo. They're happy with how things have gone in America. They don't need populist politics. They think populist politics are disgusting because populist politics are a threat to them. They've derided the middle of the country. They accuse them of clinging to their guns and their religion. They say they're bitter about the fact they're losers in the modern economy. And even as they do that, they've been using their power and their connections to make certain that that part of the country stays the losers in this modern economy. They tout diversity as the nation's greatest strength. They point to all the foreign workers they've hired at rock-bottom wages. Then they made sure their children counted as diverse. Well, powerless kids in West Virginia or Idaho were held down as punishment for their so-called privilege for living in some of the poorest states in the country. In other words, they erected a fence around the meritocracy to make sure it would never apply to them. That's the scam. It happens every day. Heather McDonald is a Manhattan Institute fellow and the author of The Diversity Delusion, and she joins us tonight. Heather, it's great to see you.
Great to have you.
So as you look at this, you're a thinker about big trends in American life. What do you think this reveals about this country?
Well, it reveals that college has taken on a grotesquely inflated importance that it does not deserve. The real scandal is how little learning actually goes on in colleges, and yet you have parents who are absolutely obsessed to credentialize their kids simply for the status. They don't give a damn about whether their child actually learns something. It also speaks to the grotesquely inflated power of the sports industrial complex within the universities, that sports directors get a say over who gets admitted. And it also speaks to the fact that this admissions is a black box. It should be transparent. People should know how it works. This was a scandal waiting to happen because nobody understands how this process works. What I want to say, Tucker, though, apart from the fact that colleges do not deserve the tuitions they're getting, they do not deserve the role that they're playing in American life because they have utterly betrayed their responsibility to educate and to pass on the civilizational legacy that is our good fortune to have. But it's also not really about white privilege. There's a whole set of preferences that are going on in colleges. Legacy preferences are minute compared with racial preferences. So this story is being played by the left, at least, in a way that I don't think is completely accurate.
Interesting. So one thing you said really struck me, which is, why don't we know the criteria that colleges use to allow young people through the gates onto the path to success in this country? We are paying for these institutions. They're in no sense private. None of them. I think 2, Hillsdale and Grove City. Everyone else takes federal funds. So why shouldn't we know? Why do they hide from us how they make these decisions?
Well, the main reason is because of the size of racial preferences. That's what they don't want anybody to know, the fact that if you're applying to Harvard, being black gets you four times greater chance of being admitted than anybody else. This is much greater than legacy preferences. But also they just see themselves as these artistes. It would be wonderful to be able to put every admissions officer out of business by going to a purely meritocratic objective system that would destroy the ability to game the system by allowing people to know how you get in and going by an objective test. If the left believes that we're so racist, they should not want to put this much discretion in the hands of admissions officers and go to an objective test.
That is such a smart point. Heather McDonald, you always make the smartest points, and it's always great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Well, you'd think Max Boot would be a very grateful man. Despite having literally zero expertise or experience, really, in the military or foreign relations, he is somehow considered an expert on both of these. Who knows how? He even has his own column in the Washington Post. Not worth reading, but still, it's a column. I guess it pays. But despite all that, Max Boot is not happy. For one, America is still at peace with both Iran and Russia, and that drives him insane. But he's mad for another reason. In a recent column, Boot complains that people keep using the word "niv" to describe people like him. He wants that word retired, permanently banished from the language and public discourse. It's an unfair term, he says, even an offensive one. When people call him a neocon, they're suggesting that he somehow provided the ideological justification for the Iraq War. They're calling him a clueless warmonger who sees every international incident as an opportunity to launch new wars that other people will die in. They're calling him a person who can't learn from his mistakes and instead wants to repeat them over and over and over until his country has depleted all the prosperity it took 2 centuries to build. Now, you may be thinking at home, wait a minute, all of those things are true about Max Boot. And of course, now you know why Max Boot is so eager to abolish the term neocon. It's become a slur, and people like Max Boot are the reason why it's a slur. Well, up next, a prominent figure in the media is in the news tonight, and we're going to take a very close look at why. It's also time for Final Exam. Can you beat the professionals at remembering these strange and obscure news events that took place in the past week? Lauren Blanchard up tonight, aiming to tie her all-time record. Her challenger, Raymond Arroyo. Compete against one another to see who has been paying the closest attention to what's going on in the news. After a brief hiatus tonight, we are happy to say that Fox correspondent Lauren Blanchard is back. She's here to defend her 8-game winning streak. Sean Spicer and Ed Henry are among those who have been buried by Blanchard. If she wins, she will tie Kitty Pavlich and Shannon Bream for the single longest winning streak in this segment. This week, her challenger, one of her all-time favorites, best-selling author Raymond Arroyo, who, by the way, has a new book out, Will Wilder, The Amulet of Power. So impressive I have it. That Raymond Arroyo. Yeah, and look, I don't want to come off that high and have you suffer at the hands of Lauren Blanchard, who, as I know, you know, is deceptively good at this game. But we will see. I know that you both know the rules. I know you have, and I'm going to read them for the sake of our audience just tuning in. Okay, your hands on the buzzers. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer the question, of course. You must wait until I finish asking the question before you answer. You can answer once I acknowledge you by saying your name. Every correct answer is worth a single point. Each incorrect answer detracts a point from your total cruelly. Best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We are ready. Oh, okay. Question 1. Over on social media, where you shouldn't go, but you may anyway, people could not stop talking about a video of Mitt Romney this week that showed his very unusual method of doing what?
Blowing out
Raymond Arroyo.
candles. Blowing out
You
candles.
can't blow out candles? I'm not sure if that's right. We'll go to the tape.
Senator Mitt Romney is being mocked on social media after sharing this video, as you can see, picking up each individual candle and blowing it out.
I'm sure it's more sanitary.
One by one.
Like
It's
instead of just
bizarre. It's bizarre.
I don't know. I'm with it on this.
There's a lot of character revealed in that, Tucker, which we won't unpack tonight.
You know what? I'm with you on that, Raymond, I have to say. But we're not going to go farther. This is a game show, not a political show. Okay. This next is multiple choice, so wait until I finish offering all the options before you win. Which famous woman, now in her 90s, just made her first ever Instagram post? Was it A, Doris Day, B, Betty White, or C, the Queen? Lauren Blanchard.
It was the Queen.
The Queen? Was it the Queen? And by the way, the script does not specify which Queen. Was it a Queen?
Yeah, it was the
Queen Elizabeth.
Queen.
You know the lady from England? She just got on Instagram. The Queen, who's 92 years old, made her first ever Instagram post today. There she is.
That was not it.
Showing off her revenge body.
Now, Tucker,
there you go. That
we should have clarified. Queen Latifah or Queen Elizabeth? I want a clarification from the Rules Committee on this.
It just said the Queen.
Okay.
All right. Question 3.
Majesty.
Now, I want you to brace yourselves for this question. This is multiple choice and is difficult, okay? Vegans have come up with a new way to save animals, 3D printed steaks. It's fake meat. It comes in the form of a vegetable paste that is squirted out of a nozzle into the shape of a ribeye steak. It sounds appealing. Which combination of vegetables is used to make this ersatz steak? Is it A, cabbage and soy, B, broccoli and green beans, or C, rice and seaweed?
I believe it's the first.
Raymond Arroyo. It's A, cabbage and soy. Is that your answer?
Yes, cabbage and soy.
Yes. Is it cabbage and soy to the tape?
Who doesn't love a delicious, mouth-watering steak like this one? Watch it being lovingly prepared by a 3D printer.
Oh.
Yeah, the chef is basically a fax machine with a nozzle. Worse, it's a vegan steak, not made from vegans. The ink from its cartridge is made from rice, peas, and seaweed. Yes, seaweed.
No.
Scrumptious.
No. Ooh.
Raymond, don't berate yourself. In the life of every contestant who faces off against Lauren Blanchard, there's a moment like this.
Yes.
But all is not lost, because we're going into question 4.
Okay.
And here it is. An unbelievable new photograph shows a South African wildlife photographer getting too close to his subject and winding up in the animal's mouth. What kind of giant beast tried to swallow him?
It was a
Lord
whale.
Blanchard.
A whale. Big whale.
A whale? Like a Jonah situation?
Yes, it was one of those. Or Pinocchio.
Was it a whale? Old
Dad?
Testament come to life.
Was it Pinocchio?
This has to be an unprecedented picture. Take a look. There, the jaws of a whale, and there,
It's
the
all
legs
video,
and
too.
flippers of a man dangling. A wildlife photographer.
How did
Just
I
his
miss
legs
this?
showing.
It took less than 2 seconds.
Terrifying.
And amazingly, he survived.
The ocean very much. Preferring the Great Lakes.
That's unbelievable. He lit a fire inside the whale's belly. Okay, so our judges in New York are calling an audible, as they sometimes do, and they're saying that the final question is now worth 2 points.
Oh,
okay. Which
I
seems
love
only
it.
fair. It's kind of like a handicap in golf. All right.
Okay. No, you got to give me a chance. I don't want to be end up a tombstone.
No, you would join a long list of worthy opponents. But in any case, here's the final question. A wild video out of Australia shows a man paragliding across the countryside of that continent/country. When he finally hits the ground, he's violently attacked by what? Lauren Blanchard.
Kangaroo.
Kangaroo. Would make sense. Probably not a koala bear. We'll find out. Kangaroo is the answer.
A man spent 2 hours paragliding across the Australian countryside, but the real danger came after Jonathan Bishop landed safely on the ground.
What's up, Skip?
Oh my gosh.
There it is.
Greatly, you can't do anything. Like you are stuck. You are at the mercy of this animal.
Bishop was actually punched twice by one of the kangaroos before they both bounced away.
Spirit Peak, Australia.
Lauren Blanchard, there's not a fact you don't know. There's not a viral video you haven't seen. There's not a single piece of minutia about American life that you haven't totally internalized. Raymond, there's no shame in being where you are tonight.
Well,
You
I
did
hope you
better
build
than
a
most.
nice
Congratulations.
tomb for me and not just a headstone.
Your name will live forever.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. It was so nice.
Congratulations to you. And to you, Lauren Blanchard, we have the Eric Wemble mug for you. Of course, we're not there to physically present it to you, but you have 9 of them now, almost an entire set. Congratulations.
So close. So close.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's final exam. Pay excruciatingly close attention to the news all week. Tune in next Thursday to see if you can beat our experts. We'll be right back. Is related to the hate crime he apparently fabricated 2 months ago. Trace Gallagher's been following it and joins us tonight. Trace?
And Tucker, no surprise the not guilty plea came today. Despite overwhelming evidence against him, the actor vehemently denies the charges. Remember, Smollett claims that back in February, 2 men beat him up, put a noose around his neck, poured bleach on him, shouted racial and homophobic slurs, and yelled, "This is MAGA country." Those 2 men are brothers who say Smollett orchestrated the whole thing, even told them where to buy the noose and bleach. And if 16 counts aren't enough, hot water, a threatening letter filled with white powder that turned out to be Tylenol that Smollett is accused of sending himself a week before the alleged attack is now being investigated by federal authorities. Mail fraud often leads to jail time. And now it appears that when Smollett was still considered a victim, Tina Chen, a former senior aide, Michelle Obama, told Chicago's top prosecutor, Kim Fox, saying Smollett's family was concerned about the police investigation and wanted the matter turned over to the FBI. Fox later emailed Chen, quoting, "Spoke to Superintendent Johnson," that's Chicago's top cop. "I convinced him to reach out to the FBI to ask that they take over the investigation." Fox also sent an unnamed Smollett family member nearly the same message. The family member responded, quote, "Oh my God, this would be huge." Fox, who recused herself before Smollett was charged, says the family was worried about media leaks. Superintendent Johnson says he spoke to the FBI, but in the end, the investigation stayed where it should have. Tucker.
Trace Gallagher, good to see you. Well, last night, a group of highly paid media figures gathered in Washington, D.C. to do what they do best, congratulate themselves on being such incredibly good people. It was the annual First Amendment Awards. This show wasn't nominated, by the way, and to the literal-minded, it might seem a little odd. We've spent the last 2 years almost alone in Washington, by the way, defending the idea that the unpopular ought to be allowed to say uncomfortable things in public. That was our understanding of free speech. But this is 2019. The point of the First Amendment Award is now just the opposite. It goes to the media executive who has worked most tirelessly to punish the people he doesn't agree with and force them to be quiet. Given those new criteria, this year's award went to, of course, CNN President Jeff Zucker.
The day that we allow those in power to determine who gets to ask them questions and what kinds of questions we ask, that is the day that this dinner ceases to exist.
Who gets to ask the questions? Now, whatever you think of Jeff Zucker, he is not encumbered by shame. Keep in mind that it was his network, CNN, that argued in public that Fox News should not be allowed to ask any questions of the candidates in the Democratic primary debates. That just happened. It was also CNN that demanded that radio show host Alex Jones be silenced because Jeff Zucker didn't like what he was saying. CNN waged a long campaign against Jones. It worked. Jeff Zucker silenced and deplatformed his show. It was a stunning defeat for free speech. So naturally, Jeff Zucker just won the First Amendment award.
Whether you like Donald Trump or you dislike Donald Trump, the one thing that I think we can all agree on is that Donald Trump has made American journalism great again. At CNN, our core mission is to tell the truth, to hold those in power accountable, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable.
CNN's mission is to tell the truth. Well, maybe someone ought to tell Carter Page CNN falsely suggested he was a Russian agent and helped destroy his life. Or tell it to the Covington High School students. Jeff Zucker's network slandered and shamed and tried to destroy them, all on the basis of lies. The truth? Well, maybe the judge will believe that. Zucker had better hope so. CNN is facing a $250 million lawsuit over their fraudulent Covington coverage. Lots of luck. Jeff Zucker doesn't want to talk about any of that, so as always, he changes the subject to, you guessed it, Fox News.
This administration has made it abundantly clear that they do not have respect for or tolerance of a free and independent press. They call us the enemy of the people. They limit our access. They selectively grant interviews, most often to outlets that have assured them that they will follow the script. Quite literally, they put our lives at risk with their words and their actions.
Fox News follows the script? Right. This is the only network on television where you won't hear the same script every night. It's the only news channel that deviates in any way from the other 10. They are united in total conformity. We are different. Zucker hates that. He prefers strict obedience. Jeff Zucker would shut down Fox News tomorrow if he could. Just the other day, Zucker said that Fox News has, quote, done tremendous damage to the country. How? By disagreeing with him and his friends. This is not the behavior of someone who supports free speech. It's the mark of someone who wants to crush free speech and has. And yet in Washington, people like that get First Amendment awards. It's grotesque. Well, a collection of 9/11 calls released by the Daily Beast show the miserable, often suicidal environment that prevails inside some of Amazon's many warehouses across this country.
Hi, this is the Amazon.
This is Amazon.com.
Okay, what's going on there?
We have a male, 34, suicide.
They have a female associate they believe is overdosing at the moment with a possible emotional disorders.
He attempted to cut himself 3 or 4 times tonight.
Okay, what did he attempt to cut himself with?
One of her safety box cutters.
She has very specific plans. She made a threat that she said she has enough pain pills in her car to basically end it.
And has he said how he would kill himself?
Has he said how he would kill himself? Blow his brains out?
Shannon Allen is a former employee of Amazon, and she's inside their warehouses. She's joined us before, and she joins us again tonight to give us some perspective. Shannon, thanks very much for coming on. Those recordings are horrifying. What kind of conditions could have led to 911 calls like that?
The excessive pressure that you feel when you're at work, the constant hounding from the managers to always do better. Your best is never good enough. It's never good enough. You can't take bathroom breaks. You can't take water breaks without it counting against your rate. And if it counts against your rate, that means you have to work harder to be able to make up that rate because you took time away from standing there scanning or counting or picking to, you know, go use the bathroom or get you some water. So you have to make up those rates.
How closely does the company keep track of where you are when you're in one of these warehouses?
Oh, very, very close. You're on camera 24/7 from the minute you walk in to the minute you leave. If you are not standing at your station scanning or picking or stowing, a manager will come around and want to know where you're at from the time that you're not scanning till the time that you start scanning again.
You're on surveillance camera for